No one at Evergreen Wildlife Sanctuary could explain it. Kumba, the mighty silverback who once shook the ground with his power, had fallen into silence, refusing food, refusing life. Yet, every night, when the moonlight touched the glass of his enclosure, he pressed his massive hand against it, as if reaching for someone who wasn't there. And far away, in a quiet hospital room in Denver, a little girl named Emily whispered the same word in her sleep. Kumba. It was as if their souls were still speaking, as if something unseen was pulling them back to each other. In the wild heart of Colorado, hidden among the whispering pines and rolling shadows of the Rocky Mountains, lies the quiet town of Evergreen. At first glance, Evergreen feels like a painting come alive. Snow-dusted rooftops, wooden cabins breathing smoke into the crisp morning air, and winding trails where deer walk as if they are guardians of another time. But beyond the postcard beauty, there exists a place that holds a secret. The Evergreen Wildlife Sanctuary. Unlike the world-famous zoos with their towering gates and endless visitors, Evergreen's sanctuary was humble, almost fragile in its stillness. But what it lacked in grandeur, it made up for with something far rarer. Connection. Not the kind of connection you read in textbooks, but the kind that binds hearts across species and defies the laws of logic. It was here that a silverback gorilla named Kumba carried a silence so deep, it echoed like a prayer. He wasn't just another animal behind glass. He was a presence. A being with eyes that could pierce into the very marrow of your soul. Rescued from the claws of an illegal trafficking ring in West Africa, Kumba bore the invisible scars of survival. For years, he sat apart, not responding to keepers, not moving with others, not reaching for joy, as if waiting for someone who had not yet arrived. And then, one ordinary spring afternoon, that someone came. A little girl, just 7 years old, with soft blonde hair, a worn-out sketchbook, and eyes that carried the kind of light only innocence can hold. Her name was Emily Johnson. She wasn't looking for miracles, but miracles were waiting for her. The wolf and the lamb will feed together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox, and dust will be the serpent's food. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, says the Lord. That verse became flesh in that moment, for when Emily stood before Kumba's enclosure, she didn't scream, didn't laugh, didn't rush like the other children. She stopped, stood still, and in that silence, something moved. The 350-pound silverback rose slowly from the corner where he'd sat in shadows for years. His heavy steps pressed into the earth, and his dark eyes locked onto hers with a strange, unexplainable tenderness. Without fear, without hesitation, he approached the glass and lifted his massive hand. Emily, small and fragile, lifted hers too. Their palms aligned, separated by glass, but joined by something greater. That moment, one hand of innocence, one hand of survival, was not just contact. It was covenant. It was the beginning of a bond that would shake everyone who witnessed it. And from that day forward, Emily came every Saturday, rain or shine, carrying her sketchbook like it was scripture, her soul drawn not to the lions, not to the giraffes, not to the playful red pandas, but to Kumba. And each week, Kumba waited. Out of the mouths of children and infants, you have ordained strength because of your enemies, to silence the foe and the avenger. It began with crayons, the messy strokes of a child, trees, clouds, mountains, and often Kumba himself. She would press the pictures against the glass, her eyes shining with delight. And Kumba, once silent and broken, leaned close, studying the colors as if he understood every detail. One afternoon, Emily traced a heart on the window with her finger. Kumba, this mighty silverback, this survivor of trafficking and trauma, copied her. The staff froze, tears rising in their eyes. It wasn't about training. It wasn't about reward. It was connection. Pure, unfiltered, human and animal connection. Dr. Karen Whitlow, the sanctuary's seasoned primatologist, whispered words no one forgot. This isn't recognition. It's emotional. It's like he sees her. And he did. With Emily, Kumba wasn't a gorilla in a cage. He was whole. He was something sacred. Yet, as life often reminds us, beauty is fragile. And just as the bond bloomed into something holy, It was tested. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. One Saturday, the bench was empty. The path where Emily usually skipped forward with her sketchbook lay untouched. Kumba waited. His eyes searched, but Emily did not come. A week passed, then another. Kumba's life, once ignited by a child's light, dimmed. He refused his favorite fruits. He turned away from the keepers. The playful gleam in his eyes vanished into hollow silence. By the third week, even his name drew no response. He sat before the glass. His massive body slumped. His hand pressed against the place where her small palm once rested. He wasn't eating. He wasn't living. He was grieving. It's like he doesn't want to be here anymore, whispered Maya, a keeper who had loved him for years. The staff tried everything. Mango slices, music, mirrors, even recordings of Emily's voice captured in a school video. But Kumba turned away, his shoulders sinking like stone. Night after night, he pressed himself against the glass, not staring at himself, but waiting for her. Until one night, he lifted his gaze to the security camera. Deliberate, heavy, filled with an aching question that pierced Maya's heart. Where is she? The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Maya couldn't rest. Something was wrong. She searched through the zoo's visitor records. Emily's name disappeared after April 12th. She asked the school, no answers, until finally an email surfaced from Emily's mother. Emergency. Emily won't be visiting for a while. Those words hung like thunderclouds. Emergency. The fear gnawed at Maya. Was Emily sick? Injured? Worse. That night, she sat in the dark keeper's office, staring at the monitor. Kumba hadn't moved in over an hour. He was waiting at the glass, his hand pressed where Emily's once was, as though if he stayed long enough, she would reappear. And though Maya didn't hear his voice, his eyes spoke what words could never say. Don't let her be gone. It was then Maya made a silent vow. She would find Emily. For Kumba. For the bond that defied the cages of men. And in that vow, a story of survival, of animal rescue, of human and animal connection was about to unfold. One that would change not just Kumba's life, but everyone who witnessed it. Emily had been hospitalized for a sudden illness, her absence unexplained to the sanctuary. Weeks later, when she finally returned, thinner, fragile, but alive, Kumba roared with a sound the staff had never heard. Not anger, not fear, but joy. He rushed to the glass, pressing his hand once again to hers, and Emily, weak but smiling, lifted her small palm to meet his. Tears ran down every face watching, because in that moment, a gorilla and a little girl showed the world what words could never capture. That love, when pure, does not bow to species, distance, or silence. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. The next morning, Maya rose with the weight of a decision pressing down on her chest like the mountain air that loomed heavy over Evergreen. She had not slept, haunted by the way Kumba's eyes had searched hers through the dim glow of the security camera. Eyes that weren't just watching, but pleading, a silent plea that whispered louder than any cry. Find her. And so, with resolve burning in her, she set out on a journey that felt less like duty and more like destiny. This wasn't just about a gorilla anymore. It wasn't just about a child. This was about something larger. A truth that connected animal and humanity in ways science couldn't chart and logic couldn't cage. As she drove down winding mountain roads, pine trees blurring past her windows like sentinels watching her mission unfold, Maya felt the echo of a verse thrum inside her. The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. Proverbs 12:10. She whispered it under her breath as if it were both shield and compass. When she finally pulled into the Johnsons' quiet street, the world seemed to still. The house was small, humble, nestled between towering evergreens. A yellow tricycle lay tipped on its side, forgotten on the porch, its wheels rusting under the weight of silence. Maya hesitated, her hands trembling against the steering wheel. Was this crossing a line? Was she intruding? But then Kumba's eyes flashed again in her mind. hollow, waiting, asking. She knew then. She wasn't here for herself, she was here for him. She rang the bell, and after a pause that stretched like eternity, the door opened. Sarah Johnson stood there, her face pale, her eyes weary with sleepless nights that no parent should have to endure. The woman's fragility was wrapped in strength, the kind of strength only born from love and loss entwined. "Yes?" she asked softly, guarded. Maya swallowed hard. "I'm Maya," she said. "I work at the Evergreen Wildlife Sanctuary. I'm here because it's about Kumba." At the sound of his name, Sarah's eyes changed. They flickered with a sorrow so deep it almost broke Maya where she stood. She stepped back, opening the door. Inside, the home smelled faintly of medicine and tea gone cold. On the wall hung a framed drawing. A gorilla and a little girl, their hands touching in crayon lines. The sight nearly undid her. Sarah sat down, her voice thin as glass. She misses him. Every single day. The words cracked like dry branches. Maya leaned forward. "Is Emily okay?" The silence that followed was heavy, until Sarah's voice finally broke. She was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, just weeks after her last visit. Maya froze. The word leukemia struck like a storm. The puzzle pieces aligned. The empty bench, the quiet house, the sudden disappearance. Yet what shattered her wasn't the diagnosis. It was Sarah's next whisper. "She barely speaks anymore. She stopped talking the day we told her she couldn't see Kumba. It's like part of her was left there, with him." And then, as if summoned by the very mention of his name, a small voice drifted from the hallway. "Is Kumba okay?" Maya turned. There stood Emily, thinner, pale, a knit cap covering her bare head. Her eyes, oh, her eyes, carried the same fierce light. But behind them was a fragility that made Maya's throat tighten. The little girl's question hung in the air. More prayer than inquiry. Maya knelt, her heart breaking, her voice trembling but steady. "He misses you," she whispered. Emily nodded once, small but sure. "So me too." And with those two words, the room fell into a holy silence. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That night, Maya didn't sleep. Emily's voice echoed in her chest. "Me too." Two words that carried the weight of love, longing, and the invisible thread tying a child to a gorilla. By dawn, her decision was carved into her heart. She drove straight to the sanctuary, straight into Dr. Karen Whitlow's office. "I want to take Kumba to see her," she declared. Karen blinked, stunned. "To the hospital? Maya, that's impossible. He's a full-grown silverback. The risk, the permits, the logistics." But Maya's voice cut firm. "He's fading, Karen. We both see it. He doesn't eat. He doesn't move. He's waiting for her. And if she's waiting too, then we can't let them both die of waiting." The words shook the air like thunder. Karen leaned back, hands pressed against her temples. "We can't just put him in the back of a truck." "He could panic, Maya. He could." "He won't," Maya whispered, her voice breaking but resolute. "He knows her. He trusts her." Karen's silence stretched long, then her eyes softened, a flicker of belief lighting within her. Maybe we don't bring Kumba to Emily. Maybe we bring Emily to him." The idea breathed hope into the room. Complications still loomed. Her weakened immune system, the risks, the approvals. But hope had entered, and it would not leave. If we isolate Kumba, sanitize everything, prepare a sterile observation room, she wouldn't even need to touch him. Just see him, Maya urged. Karen finally exhaled. I'll make some calls." Days passed in a blur of preparation. The sanctuary transformed into something more than a zoo. It became a temple of reunion. Pathways were cleared. A special medical transport van was arranged, climate-controlled and cleared by the hospital. A smaller glass room, untouched for years, was scrubbed, sanitized, prepared for this singular moment. And at last, the day came. Emily sat in the van, masked, gloved, wrapped in sterile protection. But her hands clutched her sketchbook like it was her lifeline. As the gate swung open, she trembled. Every breath, every heartbeat seemed louder than the rumbling of the wheels beneath her. Around the corner, Kumba waited. He had been moved hours earlier, guided gently into the prepared enclosure. He hadn't resisted. He hadn't raged. He had gone willingly, as if he knew. The van stopped. The sliding door opened. Cool mountain air swept in, carrying pine and hay and the murmurs of life all around. Emily stepped out, small and fragile. Her mother's arm steadying her. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. Around the corner, through the sterile glass, Kumba stood, older now, heavier, his fur darker. But his eyes, oh, those eyes, found her in an instant. He rose, not in haste, but in reverence. His massive hand lifted, pressing against the glass. Emily gasped, tears spilling as she raised her trembling hand. The glove a thin barrier, their palms aligned again. Child and gorilla, soul to soul. The room held its breath. Staff watched silently from cameras. No one daring to intrude. It was not just reunion. It was resurrection. Emily opened her sketchbook. Her hands, though weak, moved with determination. She drew a tree, a cloud, and finally, a gorilla. Kumba, with eyes as deep as the mountains. She lifted the page. Kumba leaned close, his breath fogging the glass. And then, in a moment that stole every breath, he dipped a finger into fruit, pressed it gently to the glass, and drew a circle. Not random, not instinct. A circle. Eternity. Connection. Wholeness. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. Emily's favorite shape. It seemed so simple, so ordinary. And yet in that fragile hospital glow of her heart, it became something sacred. Her eyes filled with tears. Not from sadness this time, but from something deeper, almost unnameable. It was relief, connection, healing, the kind of release that comes when two souls finally recognize each other across the distance of pain. Behind her, Sarah pressed trembling fingers against her mouth, struggling to keep the sob from escaping her chest. Even Maya, tough, composed Maya, the one who had seen loss and survival in the wild more times than she could count, felt her vision blur, because for the first time in weeks, Kumba, the gorilla who had been fading into silence and grief, looked like himself again. And for the first time in months, Emily laughed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't long, but it was pure. A small, bright sound that rippled through the air like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The gorilla tilted his head at the sound, his eyes twinkling with a childlike wonder, as if he were trying to capture that laughter and hold it forever in his memory. In that moment, something shifted. Not just in Emily's body, not just in Kumba's spirit, but in the very air between them. And though the glass still stood, their hearts had already broken through. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, and a little child will lead them. From that day forward, the world changed for them both. The hospital, moved by the astonishing impact, approved limited weekly visits under strict supervision. And so, every Friday morning, Emily would climb into the transport van, sketchbook clutched in her lap, eyes already searching the sanctuary gates before the wheels had even stopped turning. And every Friday, without fail, Kumba was there, waiting. The gorilla who had once refused food, who had retreated into shadow and silence, now pressed himself to the glass the moment he sensed her. Slowly at first, then ravenously, he began to eat again. Mangoes, apples, even banana leaf bundles he had once ignored. It was as if a dam had burst inside him, and life came flooding back. But perhaps the greatest miracle was not Kumba's return. It was Emily's. The nurses noticed it first. Her cheeks glowed brighter. She spoke more. She smiled more. She even began asking questions about other animals she once had no energy to care about. Her doctors, stunned, reported small but steady improvements in her white cell count. The treatment still drained her, still left her fragile. But every visit with Kumba seemed to give her back what medicine could not. Hope. Sarah, watching week by week, saw her daughter come back to life. And it was because of a gorilla. The sanctuary staff, once skeptical, now stood in reverent silence at the miracle unfolding before them. Dr. Whitlow, a scientist hardened by 2 decades of research, began documenting everything. I've studied primates all my life, she confessed to a visiting journalist, her voice trembling. But this is not just science. This is soul. Deep calls to deep in the roar of your waterfalls. All your waves and breakers have swept over me. Meanwhile, Maya became the silent bridge between two worlds, the keeper of moments too sacred for headlines. In her private journal, she wrote of things too delicate to speak aloud. The way Kumba tapped the glass with his knuckles after Emily left, as if pleading for one more minute. The way Emily drew two hearts before leaving, one for her, one for him. One Friday, Emily paused as she packed her drawings and looked at Maya. "Can he keep one?" she asked softly. Maya hesitated. "We can't exactly give him paper. He might eat it." Emily smiled gently, a wisdom beyond her years. She pressed a sketch against the glass. Her and Kumba sitting side by side beneath a tree. Then she stepped back, leaving it there. Kumba approached, and instead of pulling it down or ignoring it, he simply sat before it. He stared. He watched, and then, in an act that silenced every human present, he sat down directly in front of it, as if guarding it. All night long he stayed there. By morning, the keepers found him still watching, eyes steady, heart anchored, because now he had something to hold on to, just like Emily. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Just when it seemed like life had finally given them back a piece of heaven, the phone rang. It was early on a Tuesday when Maya's chest tightened at the sight of the number. Children's Hospital, Denver. She answered with trembling hands. The nurse's voice was gentle but heavy. "Emily's had a setback. She spiked a fever overnight. Her immune system is too weak to fight it. She's in isolation. She won't speak to anyone. The only thing she keeps asking is if Kumba's okay." Maya's silence on the line was deafening. That morning, when she arrived at the sanctuary, the truth was already written in Kumba's silence. He wasn't waiting by the glass. He wasn't eating. He was curled in the corner, eyes empty, food untouched. He felt her absence as if it were carved into him. No treats worked. No enrichment cheered him. He had slipped back into a silence so chilling the entire team felt its weight. Then Maya remembered Emily's drawing, the one of the girl and the gorilla beneath a tree. She found it in the staff archives, carefully preserved at Emily's request. She laminated it, placed it back on the glass. Hours passed in silence. Then, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kumba moved. He walked slowly, heavily to the glass, his eyes locked on the drawing. He stared for a long, aching moment, and then he lifted one hand and traced the heart Emily had drawn. Maya captured it in a photo and sent it to Sarah. That night, wrapped in hospital blankets, Emily saw it. Her breath was shallow, her body weak, but she smiled. A real smile, and she whispered, "Tell him I'm still here. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Emily wanted to send something back. With trembling fingers, she picked up a crayon. It wasn't her usual burst of colors. This one was simple, stripped down, a circle, thick and soft, and beneath it she wrote, "For Kumba, always." She taped it to the wall above her bed. Days passed. Her body weakened, her strength ebbed, but the circle remained, facing her like a promise she wasn't ready to break. At the sanctuary, Kumba waited. Each morning he returned to the glass, eyes searching the path where Emily once appeared. Sometimes he traced a circle on the glass with his hand, over and over, a silent ritual only the two of them could understand. Maya became their messenger, carrying videos of Kumba to Emily, carrying her whispers back to him. But it wasn't enough. Not for Emily. Not for Kumba. One evening, Sarah called Maya, her voice steady, but wrapped in grief. She's asking to see him one last time. The doctors had approved it. It would be her final visit. Maya drove in silence that night, the weight of finality pressing like a storm. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. But love endures. By morning, the sanctuary was ready. The path cleared, the glass disinfected, the laminated drawing in its place. Then the van arrived. Emily was wheeled forward, her frame fragile, wrapped in blankets. But when Kumba saw her, He moved like he hadn't in weeks, not with frenzy, but with reverence. He lowered himself to her level, eyes meeting hers through the glass. Emily's trembling hand lifted, Kumba mirrored it, and for a long sacred moment, they simply existed. No words, no movement, just presence. Then Emily whispered something, too soft for any human to hear. But Kumba heard. He pressed both hands to the glass, head bowed, shoulders curled as if carrying her pain inside himself. Tears blurred Sarah's eyes. Emily lifted one final drawing, a heart with a circle inside. Kumba pressed his forehead against it. Hours passed, but he didn't move, because in that moment, the glass wasn't glass. It was love. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Emily slipped away 5 days later, peacefully, her mother holding her hand, the circle and heart drawing above her head. At the sanctuary, Maya carried Emily's final sketch to Kumba. She framed it in soft wood and placed it at the glass. Kumba approached, stared, then sat in silence for hours. That evening, as the sun set behind the Colorado mountains, Kumba walked to the center of his enclosure. Beneath a small tree, he sat, calm, present, alive. In the weeks that followed, he did not fade. He honored. He resumed eating, moving, living. But every afternoon, he returned to the glass, placed his hand against Emily's drawing, and remembered. The staff knew the truth. Emily's love had not left. Visitors sometimes noticed the ritual. Some wept, some whispered prayers, and Maya ensured the story lived on. Not in signs, not in headlines, but in hearts. A small plaque beneath the tree read, "She saw him, and he never forgot." Years later, though Emily's laughter no longer filled the sanctuary, her presence lived on in Kumba's steady ritual, in the quiet reverence of every sunset. Because the most extraordinary stories are not about what we say, but who we choose to sit beside. Even when glass divides us, love unites us. And sometimes, against all odds, an animal and a human remind the world what miracles really look like. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. As Emily's trembling hand stayed pressed against the glass, Kumba lowered his head, eyes glistening with a depth no words could capture. For the first time in months, the great silverback exhaled a sound. Soft, low, almost like a song. Not a roar of power, but a hum of recognition. Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile, her eyes wet, and she whispered through her mask, "It's okay, Kumba. I'm here." The room blurred with tears. From her mother, from Maya, from every soul witnessing this impossible moment. And in that silence, something changed. Kumba's chest lifted stronger, fuller, as though a spark had been rekindled. Emily's frail fingers sketched one last circle in her book. 2 hands, one small and one impossibly large, touching across a barrier that never truly existed. That day, no one saw a sick child or a fading gorilla. They saw a miracle, a reminder that love is not bound by cages or illness, that even in weakness there can be strength, and that sometimes the most powerful medicine in the world is simply being remembered. And as Emily was wheeled back to the van, she turned one last time, raising her hand in a quiet promise. Kumba raised his too, pressing it against the glass, not as a goodbye, but as if to say, "Until we meet again."